just in the last 4 weeks, and next week we'll have the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and we'll have the President of France, Macron. So President Trump is on what we call Trump warp speed. We are all honored to be really serving under his leadership and his vision. And truly, when we all say, and the president himself says, he is a president of peace. He is a president focused on restoring stability. I think the entire world saw what the world will look like without strong American leadership in the last 4 years. And it's truly been an honor to get us back to where we were and back on track under President Trump's leadership.
Thank you, Mike. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm sure you're very eager to ask questions of these very smart people working very hard on behalf of the president. We do have somebody in our new media seat today. We have John Stoll, who is the head of news at X. As you all know, you're all on X. It's home to hundreds of millions of users, a large contingent of independent journalists and news organizations across geographies and political spectrums. And at the same time, X remains the go-to platform for many legacy news outlets. And I know, as I mentioned, many of the reporters in this room use X to attract eyeballs to your work. Prior to joining X, John spent 2 decades in journalism, including several years as an editor at the Wall Street Journal. We are excited to have him in the briefing room today. John, we'll let you kick it off. And as I said at the top, please direct your question to the individual up here who you'd like an answer from. John, why don't you begin?
All right, thank you very much. I am sitting in for a thriving ecosystem of journalists, independent and emerging news organizations who do depend on X for publicity, for a business model. And so I look forward to seeing many of them in this seat in months and years to come. I also thank you, Karoline, for opening this seat up to new media. It really is a testament not only to your open-mindedness, but also to innovation, that you'd actually think about, folks that are not traditionally credentialed to be in this room, and not only have a question, but also to witness. This is a very important intersection of power and the free press. Mm-hmm. And so just the ability to witness this and be part of it, it brings everybody's game up. So thank you for that. I think this is for Mike Waltz. My question is about Ukraine.
Sure.
For about more than 10 years, I've been fascinated, like many, with what's going on. Was in Northern Europe, working out of the Baltics when Crimea was annexed, and was a lot of this came on Twitter. The platform used to be known as Twitter. Was a lot of European leaders would talk about their disappointment and solidarity with Ukraine, but when it came to actually doing something, it felt like they were passing a hot potato and sent it over the Atlantic. I wonder how much of what we're seeing right now out of the administration and President Trump is a call to Europe and the European leaders and the allies that we've traditionally had to pick up that hot potato and start doing something a little bit more concrete to win and preserve the peace in Ukraine. The second question I have is, it's related, is there's been a lot of speculation that President Trump and the administration might be manipulated by Vladimir Putin. I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about the administration's posture and your confidence in the competence of this administration to go toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin.
Well, if there's I'll take the second question first. If there's anybody in this world that can go toe-to-toe with Putin, that could go toe-to-toe with Xi, that could go toe-to-toe with Kim Jong-un, and we could keep going down the list, it's Donald J. Trump. He is the deal maker in chief. There is no question that he is the commander in chief. And I, for one, and I think all Americans and around the world should have no doubt about his ability to not only handle Putin, but to handle the complexity of driving this war to an end. And then on your first piece on Europe, I'll take you back to 2014. You're right, there was a lot of hand-wringing in Europe and not a lot of action. There's also a lot of hand-wringing here in Washington under the Obama administration and not a lot of action. They literally threw blankets at the problem. And so I'll remind everyone that Putin had some type of conflict, invasion, or issue with their neighbor under President Bush with Georgia, under President Obama with Ukraine 2014, not under President Trump 45, and again with President Biden in 2022. The war should have been deterred. The war should have never happened, and I have no doubt it would not have happened under President Trump and will stop under President Trump again. But I just want to push back on this notion of our European allies not being consulted as we've entered into this process. I already mentioned the immediate phone call President Trump made to President Zelensky. He has talked to President Macron of France repeatedly last week. President Macron convened European leaders and then is coming here on Monday. Prime Minister Starmer is coming next Thursday. I've talked to every one of my national security advisor counterparts across the spectrum in Europe. I've talked to Secretary General Rutte, the leader of NATO, the Secretary General of NATO. We have repeatedly, oh, by the way, we had half our cabinet, 7 cabinet officials, including the vice president, at the Munich Security Conference, all engaging, all listening, and all making sure our allies are heard. However, we've also made it clear for years, decades even, that it is unacceptable that the United States and the United States taxpayer continues to bear the burden, not only of the cost of the war in Ukraine, but of the defense of Europe. We fully support our NATO allies. We fully support the Article 5 commitment, but it's time for our European allies to step up. And one of the things that Secretary General Rutte said on our call was, this last couple of weeks have been a real wake-up call. And I asked him, what have you been missing the last couple of years? The fact that we are going to enter into a NATO summit this June with a third of our NATO allies still not meeting the 2% minimum, a commitment they made a decade ago, literally a decade ago, with a war on their doorstep, the largest war that they're all extremely concerned about, but yet it's, well, somebody else needs to pay. We've got other domestic priorities. It's unacceptable. President Trump's made that clear. And the minimum needs to be met. We need to be at 100% in this June at the NATO summit. And then let's talk about exceeding it, which is what President Trump has been talking about with 5% of GDP. Europe needs to step up for their own defense as a partner, and we can be friends and allies and have those tough conversations.
Great. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. I have a Ukraine one and a Doge one. Who can talk Doge?
Stephen.
I could do Doge then.